Hello again, my sleepy nights. Once again, this is Kevin, and tonight I ask you to join me for an ever so sleepy sci-fi journey through the galaxy with the Beatles. You board the battered spaceship to start another mind-numbing shift, hauling waste between Mars and Earth. As the sole crew member, you begin the tedious rituals of operating the old ship alone. Settling into the pilot's seat, you review the simple day's itinerary with a groan. "All right, Izzy, let's get this over with," you mutter, patting the control panel as the engines rumble to life. You set course for Earth and ease the ship into hyperspace. Midway through, disaster strikes as an asteroid field appears in your path. A massive rock glances off the hull, sending the ship spiraling out of control. Alarms blare as you desperately try regaining control. The old ship drops out of hyperspace on a collision course with Earth. You attempt every emergency system to no avail, managing to crash belly first across a large body of water. The ship skips and groans to a stop, partially submerged. By some miracle, she holds together, but extensive repairs will be needed. Your head pounding from a cracked panel, you stumble towards the engine room, hoping to get the hyperdrive online. As you enter, a light on the ancient chiropod in the corner catches your eye. This relic came with the ship. Some kind of suspended animation chamber from the early space exploration era. You've never examined its contents closely before. Approaching the pod, you inspect its outer surface. Faded lettering along the side reads, "Subject: John Lennon." You don't recognize the name, but it seems this John Lennon is the pod's occupant. More pressingly, you now see the crash sequence activated its awakening protocol. You hesitate over whether to halt the countdown or not, but curiosity convinces you to let the process complete. With a hydraulic hiss, the lid lifts and frigid vapor pours out. A figure sits up slowly, blinking in confusion. "Good heavens, where am I?" he asks in an antiquated accent. "And what's happened to me clothes?" Taken aback, you explain haltingly that he seems to be an unfrozen relic from the distant past, a man named John Lennon, according to his pod. Lennon rubs his temples, dazed. I was afraid of something like this. The end was fuzzy. I remember Abbey Road, feeling so tired I could barely stand. He peers at you pleadingly, but never mind all that now. Tell me, does the world still love the Beatles? You stare blankly, admitting you don't know what the Beatles are. Disappointment crosses his face, but then his enthusiasm returns. Well then, me and the lads will just have to make some new fab tracks to teach the world all over again. As John is speaking, you notice a tattoo on his arm. He lifts it up to show you. On his arm are a series of coordinates to a specific place in an unknown region of the universe. When your salvage ship arrives, you agree on a whim to plug these coordinates into your old ship. The ship lurches into hyperspace towards parts of the unknown, hoping to unravel the mystery of this man named John Lennon. John's enthusiasm is infectious, even if you lack context for his 20th century origins. As the ship cruises through hyperspace, you try asking more about his background, but John's memory seems fuzzy on any specifics preceding his freezing. The last bits are shadows, really, he mutters, rubbing his temples. Under those hot lights, so tired I could barely stand. And waking up here with you, mate. He forces a smile, but never mind yesterday. Whatever this brave new world is, I'm here now. So what madness have you got to show me? You do your best to summarize human civilization's expansions and their technological leaps over the past several centuries. John listens intently, eyes wide with wonder and disbelief. Interstellar travel, instant information access, holograms. He shakes his head with a laugh. Sounds like witchcraft, I'd say. You sure this isn't all some frozen fever dream? You assure him it's all quite real. Though you must admit, you've lived your whole life spacefaring as an independent freighter captain rather than planet-side. Your own experience of the future is rather limited compared to what exists on more developed systems. John just grins and pats your shoulder. Well, I reckon that makes 2 ripe spacemen of us. I may be many fathoms out of my own era, but from the looks of it, you and I aren't so different after all. Just a couple of dreamers staring into the void. You have to smile at John's spirit and quick adaptation. You'd expected disorientation or even fear at his predicament, but he seems to be regarding it all as a grand adventure. It's almost like having a friend aboard for once, rather than just navigating the endless emptiness alone. Your ship drops abruptly out of hyperspace, a frozen planet now looming large in the viewport. You and John disembark, bundled in heavy enviro suits against the icy wind. Consulting a handheld scanner, you slowly home in on an energy signature located beneath the permafrost that matches the coordinates on John's tattoo. After hiking some distance from the landing site, the scanner indicates you are directly above the signal origin point. John helps you set some charges around a widened perimeter. You detonate them together, revealing a deep shaft bored into the ice. Rigging a simple winch system, you both descend slowly into the frozen depths. Your helmet lamps carve twin beams through the darkness as the shaft levels out into some kind of artificial chamber. Strange machinery lines the walls, powered down now. All appears dead and unused for untold ages, except for the large chiropod illuminated in the center of the room. Through the icy dome, you can just make out another humanoid figure inside. John scrambles eagerly to the pod's control panel, searching for a way to initiate the revival sequence. After fumbling with inscrutable alien interfaces, he slams his gloved fist down in frustration. You gently move John aside and inspect the controls more closely. After carefully cross-referencing with your archive scans of John's primitive pod, you find a likely command module. Punching in what you hope is an activation code, you hold your breath. A tremendous crack resounds through the chamber as the pod disengages its magnetic locks. John whoops triumphantly as the ice-crusted dome slowly lifts away with a hydraulic hiss. Frigid vapor spills out as a humanoid shape sits up stiffly inside. You watch in astonishment as he blinks frozen eyelashes, peering around in confusion. Good heavens, where am I? The figure mutters through chattering teeth. And why is it so bloody cold in here? He focuses on John, and his eyes go wide with disbelief. Well, if it isn't little Johnny Lennon himself, did those Abbey Road lads slip something in me tea? John laughs with delight and embraces the shivering man. George, it's you, clear as day, mate. What a miraculous fortune. He turns to you excitedly. We'll need some hot drinks start before poor George freezes. Come on, help me get him to the ship. However, you find yourself frozen on the spot, reading a long inscription in George's chamber. It explains that George Harrison is a clone. Back on the ship, You also inspect John's chamber, and your suspicions are correct. John Lennon is also a clone. When you break this news to them, John simply laughs and says, "Well, I guess that's why we can't remember anything, George." George slowly walks over to John's pod. Inside his pod is a guitar. George takes out the guitar and tries to strum a chord, but he stops. "I can't remember how to play the guitar." He tries to strum a chord again. "No, I've lost me musical abilities." John grabs the guitar from George. "Nonsense, Harrison. Watch this." John goes to strum the guitar, but it makes a horrific noise. "You might be right, George. I can't remember how to play." You softly explain that during the cloning process, their musical abilities might not have been transferred. John and George look crestfallen. "What are we supposed to do if we can't play music?" You shake your head apologetically, though John seems to regard this as a grand opportunity. "We've got a blank slate here, Georgie boy. I say we take the chance to reinvent ourselves, really put on a show." He mimes wildly, strumming some kind of instrument. Maybe without amps and guitars, just their own mad vocals around a space campfire. George laughs heartily at John's antics. "Once a showman, always a showman. Well, my new backwards friend, we'll just have to start from scratch introducing you to the Beatles." You suddenly trigger a flash of recognition from your historical archives. "The Beatles," you murmur slowly. "They were some kind of musical group from your time," you ask. "Some kind," John crows delightedly. "Only the bloody greatest band in history, right, George?" George nods and gives an odd little seated bow. "Too right, Johnny. Those poor aliens had to freeze us just to keep up with the demand." You're still quite hazy on 20th century culture, but begin piecing it together. Somehow these two men were members of an influential primordial band, revived from DNA traces solely to be sent somewhere unreached, to what ultimate purpose you still don't grasp. John's eagerness seems to brook no hesitation, however. "Well, we know there's two of us now," he declares excitedly. "So the others must be out there waiting if we can only find them. What do you say we can put this tin can into hypergear and go collect the whole set?" George nods enthusiastically at the notion and turns to you. "I know it's a fair ask, taking strangers from the past and all, but perhaps you'd be willing to help out two frozen mates looking for the lost band." You consider a moment, then nod. After all, their revival seems intrinsically tied to your own story, and their odd predicament has certainly sparked your curiosity. You tell them you're willing to follow any leads towards unraveling this mystery. John claps, smashing. No time to waste then. He promptly rolls up the sleeve of George's faded tunic, revealing another intricate tattoo of coordinates. Now let's give these a scan in your navi and see where they take us next. You can't help but laugh at John's irrepressible spirit. Soon, you've laid in a course based on the newly uncovered tattoo coordinates. The engine rumbles to life once more as the search for the next Beatle continues. The coordinates from George's tattoo lead to a dusty desert planet filled with criminals and smugglers. A dangerous stop. But it's your only clue to finding the next Beatle. Venturing into the city streets, you notice badly drawn wanted posters depicting a man resembling an older John and George. Discreet inquiries lead you to a wretched cantina called the Dissolver. Stealing your nerves, you push inside the raucous drinking hall through thick clouds of smoke. John takes the lead, scrutinizing each shadowy face until he spots a man slumped over a mug in the back corner. Paul, is that you? He asks incredulously. The man glares up, leeringly to reveal Paul McCartney, now bearded and haggard. The Paul you know is gone, Johnny, he rasps bitterly. I'm just a useless shell now. He explains that when he landed on this planet, his pod was opened. But when he realized his musical gifts mysteriously had vanished, he became adrift ever since, and turned to vice and villainy just to survive this wretched world, becoming an infamous outlaw with a price on his head. John shakes his head firmly. Doesn't matter what you've done or who you've become, you're still our Paul. George nods in agreement, but Paul just laughs harshly. You lads still cling to lofty dreams, but the magic's gone for good. John and George share a dismayed look. Then John's face hardens with stubborn resolve. Let's just see about that. He and George lead up onto the bar's grimy stage where a band is setting up and grab two guitars. The rowdy patrons roar eagerly for a show. But again, as the clones try strumming experimentally, their faces fall. The discordant notes make the audience jeer and hurl. No good, mates, he's right. We still can't play. The lifeless plinking reveals the painful truth. Their musical gifts have utterly vanished. Humiliated, John and George are trying to slink off the stage when spotlights snap on, highlighting Paul. It's the wanted outlaw, shouts a harsh robotic voice. Seize him. Paul shoves you all towards a back exit as white armoured troops close in. Run, lads. I'll draw them off, you say. Blocking a barrage of laser bolts with your blade, you cover the clones as they escape into the dark streets and race back to the ship. Another failure, but at least you rescued Paul. And though the future looks uncertain, the journey must go on. You pilot the old ship out of range of the planet's surface cannons, setting course for deep space. Below, searchlights slice through the gloom as authorities swarm the spaceport seeking Paul. But thanks to his distraction, your ship slips away undetected, with all 3 Beatles safely aboard. You review the nav charts linked to the final cryptic coordinates tattooed on Paul's arm. Your only clue towards finding the last missing bandmate. While Paul rests, John and George occupy themselves in the machine shop, trying to cobble together a makeshift instrument from some spare parts. But each dissident clatter only further confirms the painful truth. Their musical gifts are gone, leaving them empty echoes of the talents they once possessed. It's hopeless, utter rubbish, George mutters bitterly after hours spent wiring together scrap speakers and pipes. I couldn't play a note now to save myself. Paul observes solemnly from the doorway. The magic's deserted us, lads. Our gifts are gone for good. Their crestfallen eyes reflect hollow resignation. Later, on the observation deck, John joins you at the viewpoint with a thoughtful gaze at the passing stars. You know, seeing that last piece of the puzzle on Paul's arm got me thinking, he says. Maybe this ain't over yet. Maybe there's still one final act before the curtain falls. He looks at you. What if getting the band fully back together is the key? What if answers wait at these coordinates? John's face brightens as the hyperdrive engages. Onward then. You nod with a half smile. Onward. Not much left to lose, I suppose. When the ship finally drops out of hyperspace some days later, you stare down at the wrecked planet dominating the view screen. Fighting violent tremors, you manage a steady descent to the bizarre, rippling surface. Donning masks, you lead the group out into the muggy air beneath the swollen purple sun. John pivots slowly, taking in astonishing sights of the primordial swamp world. Blimey, I've never seen anything so wild. You proceed on foot, slogging through bogs and avoiding hidden sinkholes. Savage wildlife stalks you, culminating in an enraged megabeast that nearly tramples the group before you manage to hide inside a rocky crevice. After an agonizing hour wedged inside, you emerge scraped and exhausted, back onto level ground. No more swamp juice for me, John wheezes. I'll stick to whiskey. The land gradually grows somewhat drier as you press over the week ahead, rations dwindling Strange visions and murmurs haunt the edges of perception. But finally, cresting a wooded ridge, you spot a crumbling moss-strewn statue of Ringo down below. Just visible behind it lies a settlement. Grinning, you hurry down the slope toward the alien dwelling. But shock roots you in place as you draw nearer. The beings all share Ringo's familiar facial features. Before you can react, the band rushes past to joyously embrace the stunned Ringo clones that surround you. "It's you. It's really you," John exclaims tearfully. One clone approaches you hesitantly. "Greetings, visitors. Please allow me to take you to our village master." You follow him to the large central hut. Inside sits an elder being who rises to warmly embrace the awestruck band. "Welcome, my friends," Ringo declares merrily. He passes around carved mugs filled with a sweet fruit concoction, but curiosity overwhelms you. Why are there so many clones here? What is Ringo's connection to the band? Noticing your intense distraction, Ringo smiles understandingly. He gestures to a tray of odd, colourful mushrooms. "Why not sample our village's special delicacy first? They provide quite the experience for weary minds." Before you can object, the band eagerly devours the fungi feast. At first, nothing happens. Then suddenly, George stares wide-eyed at the undulating living walls. "Blimey, are you lot seeing this too?" Nearby, Paul yelps and recoils as the floor appears to come alive, writhing like a snake pit. John erupts into hysterical laughter, doubling over with tears of mirth streaming down his face. Ringo watches on, eyes twinkling knowingly. The bizarre hallucinations increase exponentially. Soon the Fab Four have wandered outside to stare in awe at the rippling rainbow foliage and warped village structures. "It's all too much," George exclaims. You rush after them, shocked to find John carefully inspecting a tree, murmuring to himself, "What a lovely little tree you are." You try rounding up the blissed-out bandmates, but they keep wandering off, enraptured by each new reality their unleashed minds are conjuring. When you plead for help, Ringo just chuckles wisely. "Let the mushrooms guide their journey." You spend untold hours in exhausted amusement, chasing them around the tiny village as they explore the wonders each new moment creates. John lies staring up at the sky, enraptured by the passing clouds he's imbued with elaborate personalities and backstories. George keeps getting distracted by plants and rocks, which possess important messages just for him. At one point, he's alarmed to find his hands have been replaced with mismatched alien appendages, but quickly accepts his new hands. Meanwhile, Paul has befriended a small stick, which he's dubbed Major Mustachio, and carries along meandering conversations about the true nature of time and the universe. You you're able to occasionally nudge them back on track when they stray too far. By the time the mushrooms finally relinquish their hold on the band, you're all utterly exhausted. "What a magical mystery tour," John exclaims with a grin, their pupils still faintly dilated. As you all finally gather around the evening fire pit, the Beatles excitedly recount their visions to an indulgent Ringo. He nods thoughtfully as their descriptions grow increasingly obtruse. Then he says, "You see the power of perception to shape reality. The mind journeyed to remarkable frontiers today." They murmur in awed agreement. However chaotic the experience, perhaps it served some deeper purpose after all. As the fire dies down to fading embers, you hesitantly ask the question haunting you again. Why are there so many clones here? How is Ringo connected to this band? Why is this village on such a remote, dangerous planet? Sensing your intense curiosity, Ringo's expression grows solemn. Leaning forward so his face is half lit by the dimming coals, he says in a grave tone, "If you truly seek answers to such mysteries, then you must embark on one final journey to find the original King Ringo." The band voices eager agreement, undaunted by further adventure, but you hesitate, gazing around at the tiny firelit gathering of curious clones. "You've brought us this far," you reply carefully, "but what makes you certain that this king holds the secrets you seek?" Ringo's eyes take on a faraway look. "I cannot expect you to trust mere words, but know that I have faith in the answers that rest with my originator, my creator." He focuses again, placing a hand on your shoulder. "Will you walk a while longer with us, my friend?" You glance at the band, their faces lit with hope and expectation, then back to Ringo's patient gaze. With a resigned sigh and shake of your head, you nod. Lead the way. After so long spent chasing this mystery, what's a bit further now? You've come too far to turn back now, without seeing where this path leads. Ringo smiles gratefully. As you walk back to the simple guest hut, you glance up at the stars through breaks in the dense canopy. What does this King Ringo have to do with the band? Across such unfathomable distance, do the answers lie in his hands, or does his realm hold only stranger questions? Either way, you must see this unexpected tale through to its very end. In the morning, you trek through the jungle, finally reaching an expansive ancient city, silent beneath massive vine-covered step pyramids. At the heart looms the largest tiered edifice yet, its stone passage promising revelation. As you stand awestruck, Ringo proclaims, "The one I saw in visions dwells within, the king who will finally reveal all." But gazing up at the monumental structure, you hesitate. There must be a safer path to answers than what's inside. Ringo nods understandingly,
I know I ask much, my friend, but this is the only way. Resigned, you begin the long ascent up the crumbling steps into the pyramid's core. Inside, cool ancient air kisses your skin and shadows flicker in torchlight. The deeper you go, the heavier the atmosphere feels. After hours climbing upward through dust-choked halls, you reach an engraved doorway. Passing through, an astonishing sight greets you. A lone elderly figure rises unsteadily from a stone with a gnarled walking stick. As he lifts his head, his eyes instantly widen in pure shock.
My word, it can't be, he exclaims in a familiar Liverpool lilt. Is it really you boys after all this time? The band stares open-mouthed before shouting, Ringo, and they all tackle him into a massive hug, laughing and weeping simultaneously. You observe the emotional reunion as revelation dawns. Could this be the original King Ringo Starr himself? When the clones finally release him, Ringo gazes fondly at their faces.
Words can't express how good it is to see you again, lads,
he says sincerely.
But I suppose I owe you all an explanation.
He settles back with a weary sigh.
See, after we lost Paul back on Earth, I was the last one standing. The weight of it all, the expectations, the legacy, felt too heavy a burden to bear alone. I know I should have been grateful for the time we had together, but I just missed you boys so much.
He shakes his head ruefully.
So I went and did something foolish. I paid some back alley scientists to cook up some clones from samples of your old DNA. I know it was wrong, but I was desperate to see my friends again, even just once. And when the authorities caught wind of the illegal cloning, I used everything I had left to launch your pods into deep space towards this planet. It was reckless, but the idea of losing you all again was just too much to endure.
Ringo's eyes glisten with building tears.
Fate interceded though. There was an attack. Police ships scattering your pods. I got forced down here alone, with no way to search for where it all ended up.
He gazes around at them all.
But against all odds, this wonderful stranger here saw fit to bring us back together.
You nod in acknowledgement.
I'd lost hope after so long with only these clone servants for company.
Ringo waves a hand wearily.
But just seeing your faces again makes every sacrifice worthwhile. My selfish wish came true, to have my family back once more.
He embraces each Beatle again tenderly.
The past can't be reclaimed. but what we have endures. I'm just so very glad you lads are here with me now. You see tears glistening in their eyes as they hug Ringo tightly. This long journey through the stars makes sense at last. Their peerless friendship persists across all boundaries. The band ask Ringo about their lost creative gifts. He nods somberly, turning to face them. I'm afraid the technology then couldn't yet clone your musical talents, only your minds and DNA signatures. I anticipated your skills wouldn't carry over to your new selves, but I just missed me friends. The Beatles lower their heads crestfallen, but Ringo adds encouragingly, just because those abilities aren't inbuilt anymore doesn't mean you can't rediscover music's joy. The passion and persistence that fueled your art remains inside you, if you actively nurture it again. The band's eyes light up with hope once more. Do you really think we could learn to play all over again, Richie? Paul asks tentatively. Ringo gazes at them warmly. I know you lads better than anyone. You never did give up just because the road looked long and doubtful ahead. If you reconnect with the creative spirit inside, dedicate yourselves to daily practice and support each other as old friends. I'm certain in time you can regain true musical mastery. George shakes his head, filled with wonder. I can't believe after all these years lost out among the stars, you kept faith that the music might someday bring us back together. Ringo chuckles softly. I always knew it would, Georgie. It's our bones. Speaking of which, he leads them to a hidden chamber concealed beneath a heavy stone trapdoor. Inside lies an astonished sight. Their legendary personal instruments, preserved beneath layers of dust. Paul's Hofner violin bass, George's Gretsch guitar, all intact. The band gazes in awe, hesitantly reaching out to pick up and handle their old tools again, now strange to their untrained hands. A torrent of memories washes over their faces as long dormant neural pathways flicker to life once more. Reverential silence fills the room. Ringo surveys the scene with a nostalgic smile. I believe we can rekindle the music within all over again if we support each other, work hard, and keep faith through new challenges. He places his hand on Paul and John's shoulders. I'd be honoured to help mentor and guide you back to creative fulfillment, if you'll have me. But the commitment must come from your hearts. Moved beyond words, the Beatles embrace him as a lone tear traces down Ringo's weathered cheek. John finds his voice first. It's like you said, Richie. The road ahead looks long, but we'll walk it the only way we know how. Together. The other's voice passionate agreement, their spirits rekindled. You make preparations to depart soon afterwards,
believing your role in this strange fellowship has reached its natural end. But that evening around the communal fire, Ringo makes an unexpected announcement on behalf of the whole group.
We talked it over, he says, and we'd like to remain here indefinitely, where it's safe from prying eyes and expectations.
He looks to you with earnest warmth.
But you'll always be part of our fun family, bonded through the stars. Once we've had ample time to heal old wounds and prepare our hearts, we dearly hope you'll come back to see how we're getting on.
You're surprised but deeply touched by the invitation to return someday. This isolated planet represents a refuge for them, a place to rekindle their creative flames away from judgment at their own patient pace. You gratefully agree, embracing each in turn. The echoes of their melodies may sleep a while longer, but you know their passions still burn bright, awaiting release wherever the road may lead you henceforth. You feel a certain legendary song will play again when the time is right. After tearful farewells, you make the bittersweet lone walk back through the ruins toward the distant landing site. A chapter closing, but your heart remains optimistic. In the lonely weeks of travel that follow, pangs of absence sometimes catch you off guard. But one quiet night, while tuning through your radio, a fragment of a melody suddenly reaches your transceiver. The opening chords of Come Together, played with patience and simple grace. You close your eyes and smile, vividly picturing the band seated together around a crackling fire. You scan the glittering starscape ahead thoughtfully. Perhaps after so long spent seeking externally, it's time you turn journeying inward for a while instead. You set a new course, bound for places unexplored. The future awaits, bright with promise, and you know you will always have a home on that distant haven planet where the music never truly died.